Welcome back, fight fans. So I'm going to be going over tonight's fight, which is George Liddard versus Conway. So we have George Liddard taking the big step up in his career, which Liddard is all about pressure, power, and breaking his opponents down. Whilst you've got Conway, who is more of a classic boxer, kind of does all the basics correct. So I'm going to break this down for you, give the strengths and weaknesses of both fighters, and see how these styles match. Is this going to be a good match of styles, or will this be a bad match of styles? Let's get on with it. So let's start with Liddard, who is the main prospect here, who's, as I said, he's taken a big step up here, right? George Lidard's fought quite a few people in his career already who have given him different levels of test, but Conway is the real test here. So I think with George Liddard, what I like about him more than anything is, number one, his jab. He doesn't really have, I would say, a fast jab, and he definitely doesn't have a tippy-tappy jab. He just has a strong ramrod jab. You can see that George Liddard, when he throws that jab, he puts everything behind it. You know, the full shoulder goes into that jab. And he just likes to fight behind it. But what he does with that jab as well, because it's so strong and such a ramrod jab, it pushes his opponents back because they're not getting tapped with it. They're getting hit with a hard shot. I also like about George Liddard as well. He has good upper body movement. You know, he does come in sometimes with a high guard, but usually it's just his upper body movement that's really good. And when he does come in with that high guard, that is really when he's walking his opponents down. Not in every way, but when I've been watching George Liddard, in some ways he does remind me of Nigel Benn. So I think that's quite an interesting style. And I think with George Liddard, if he wins this fight, then he's going to go on to big things. Because one thing you can say about George Liddard, he has a very fan-friendly style. And to add to that fan-friendly style, it's not just that he has power in one hand, he has power in both hands. And what I love seeing about George Liddard is his left hook. His left hook is so powerful. And a lot of boxers know this, is when someone's throwing power shots on their left, it doesn't feel the same as being hit with the right. And what I mean by that is, most boxers are used to fighting orthodox, right? So they're used to getting hit from the right. But when you get hit from a power shot from your left, it really does feel different. So I love that about George Liddard, is that he has the power in both hands, but I just love his left hooks. And it's not just that it's powerful, it's the timing and the accuracy he has on that left hook. You can see a lot of his knockouts and stoppages. I think he's got 7, if I'm right. I think he's got about a 50% knockout ratio. But when he has hurt people, it's usually come from that left hook, which comes out of nowhere. It's so strong and accurate. And he mixes up really well. You see George Liddard, he's not a headhunter, even with that power. He does mix it up to the head and to the body. And I feel like here, with how Conway's style is, he needs to go for that body to try and slow Conway down, try and throw Conway off his game plan. But yeah, I love his combinations. And another thing about George Liddard as well, is his work on the inside. So how he fights when he sort of gets in close. A lot of people would smother their work. George Liddard just seems to be able to get off in the clinch with people. So you see him up close with people, he is so good up close. I love watching him when he's got people against the ropes or when he's in the center of the ring and then he just go into the body, into the head. And he throws these, because he's quite a compact fighter, he throws these lovely uppercuts. And yeah, overall, I just think his inside game is brilliant. And this kind of goes for both fighters, because I think both have a really good engine. But George Liddard, with the amount of pressure and power shots he throws, he really does have a good engine. Like I said, those jabs aren't little flicky jabs like, just popping the jab, or kind of like how Tyson Fury throws a jab, right? It's more of a flick. George Liddard puts everything into it, including the shoulder. So it is literally a ramrod jab, and to do that, you've got to have really good cardio to be able to keep throwing that level of energy. Now, the one main criticism I have of George Liddard is how open he is for a counter. Again, he has a fan-friendly style and he puts everything into it when he goes for people, right? And you watch him when he's got people against the rope or when he's in close, he does, quote-unquote, throw the kitchen sink. But when he's throwing, if you watch how he throws his hooks and everything, he is wide open for a counter. Now, Conway does lack power. I think Conway's got like 6 or 7 knockouts himself, but with a lot more fights. The only way I can see Conway really backing up George Liddard, getting respect, is by catching him and countering on when George Liddard is throwing. Now, the one shot that George Liddar's got to watch out for with Conway, which is his money shot, is Conway's uppercut. he does throw a nice uppercut. So so George Liddard's really got to watch out when he's throwing that he doesn't want to get caught by Kieran Conway, because even though he hasn't got a high knockout ratio, I bet that guy's punches don't tickle. And another thing I've noticed about Liddard as well is sometimes when he's done throwing combinations, or when he does start to get tired, even though the work rate is high, he does come in with his hands low. And again, if he's in there with a fighter who is faster than him, he could get caught on the chin. Either way, like I said, that's the main downfall I find with George Liddard, is when he's overcommitting, he can be open. The only thing here, I just don't think that's going to be a problem this fight because of Kieran Conway's style. So if that's the only flaw I can see of George Liddard, I think he's going to be very comfortable in this fight, because even though I think Kieran Conway could outbox him for a bit, I just feel like George Lidlard's just going to have too much pressure. And kind of how I compare the fights is when I just sort of look back at the Amber Williams fight and how he got to Kieran Conway in the ring. So I think going to the 6th or 7th round, it was pretty even. And then I can't remember, it was round 8 or something. Either way, Amber Williams put Kieran Conway down with an uppercut. Now, I feel like once Kieran Conway's form broke, that's when Amber Williams got to him. And I feel like George Liddard is just going to be a better version of Amber Williams for pressure fighting. So either way, I feel like if that's the only weakness I can personally see in George Liddard, I think he'd be quite comfortable tonight. Now, let's have a little chat about Kieran Conway. So how I sum up Kieran Conway, and I've watched a lot of his fights now because he's always on decent undercards, and I always tune in for a Kieran Conway fight. He's not the most fan-friendly because he's more of a clean, tidy boxer. And how I kind of sum up a fighter like Kieran Conway is he does all the basics good. He just doesn't do anything exceptional. I think the only thing I can put in Kieran Conway's arsenal as exceptional is that he's just tough and he's got a really good chin. But aside from that, nothing he really does makes me go, oh, that aspect of his game is like world level, or, you know, that's his main thing. He kind of just does all the basics good. And with a fighter like that, that's when they can expose people, right? If you can do all the basics good and you're not a very good fighter, then someone like Kieran Conway expose that. And this is kind of why I find that step up tonight is going to be really interesting, because how good is George Liddard? This is a good level to test him. And I feel like Conway is going to really give us some answers about Liddard. Now, the one thing I really like about Conway's arsenal, which might give George Liddard a lot to think about, is his double jab. And I hope Conway uses that tonight. Is he needs to throw that double jab continuously in Liddard's face. Because, again, like I said, even though Conway's knockout ratio doesn't exactly speak a lot, because like I said, I think he's got 7 knockouts, those jabs hurt. I guarantee they hurt. If he keeps throwing those double jabs and keeps Liddard off, that double jab in your face all night is just going to drive anybody insane. And I feel like Kieran Conway actually has some good hand speed, so he needs to use that hand speed tonight. Like I said, if he can use that hand speed, and he might be able to catch George Liddard when he's overcommitting, he could hurt George Liddard, may even put George Liddard down. And the main thing about Kieran Conway is that uppercut. Now, if you watch his fights, his uppercut is slow. Not because he's a slow fighter, it's because he throws that uppercut from so low, he generates so much power, that when it does land, it hurts. And I forget the fighter. I know he was a French fighter. It was on the undercard of Triple G and Canelo, but he caught that fight with an uppercut, and you could see the pain in his face. Like, he literally took a knee and was holding his head. So I would love Kieran Conway to land that uppercut tonight, just to see how George Liddard reacts to it. And the one thing about Kieran Conway, which is the main thing I'm looking forward to tonight, is that he can counter off the ropes. Kieran Conway can counter quite well. So I really wanted to counter George Liddard, because we can see how George Liddard deals with someone countering back and almost fighting back against him. So that's one of the main things I'm looking out for tonight. Well, the two things really is the countering and the great uppercut. And again, like I said, the added extra, I hope he throws that double jab all night. And another thing that Kieran Conway does a lot as well is he goes to the body. And I think, I don't know how much that'll affect Liddard. I've seen Liddard get hit to the body, and he seems like that's not really a weak point. But either way, go to the body and slow a pressure fighter like that down. But how Liddard does come in, he's pretty tight with the body. And as I'm saying this, a lot of their arsenal is really similar. Like I said, they both throw combinations, they both go to the head, they both go to the body. It's just, like I said, I think Kieran Conway does everything good, and I think these are some of the areas that Liddard exceeds in over him. But the one thing about Conway, bar I would probably say the Abel Williams fight. I've seen him be nothing but calm. He is kind of a fighter, right? That he comes in with a game plan and he sticks to that game plan pretty well. If it, if his game plan is just to throw the double jab, throw the uppercut, he is pretty good at sticking to it. And like I said, the only fight I remember him really losing the game plan was Amma Williams. Even that French guy I said who he lost against, he still stuck to the game plan. He just lost nearly every single round. George Liddard, on the other hand, I haven't seen him in that much trouble, so I want to see him adapt. I want to see if he can throw Kieran Conway off his game plan. Because if he can, that's impressive. And if he can get hurt, but if Kieran Conway in any way can cause George Liddard any discomfort, then I'd like to see how George Liddard will recapture his flow when it's been disrupted. Now, one of the main weak areas of Kieran Conway is that he's so upright. You watch any Kieran Conway fight, even though he has quite good foot movement, he is so stiff. He's like a ball. That man needs to be doing some limbo competitions to get looser. But he's just so stiff and his chin is exposed. If Liddard can come in and kind of get low and get under his jab, he could easily catch Kieran Conway on the chin. I'm surprised no one's caught him more on the chin than they have. But yeah, he's very stiff and upright. He has almost that kind of that old-fashioned like Eastern European amateur style. He's just very stiff like a board. And the other thing that doesn't really surprise anybody here is also that he lacks the power, okay? So, he has a very low knockout ratio. And like I said, I think he still punches hard because he's a pretty big fighter. I think he comes into the ring probably about 170, 175. He hydrates pretty well. He's a big guy for the weight, but he still hasn't got that many knockouts. So that is unfortunately a weak part of his game, is the fact that he might lack that power to keep anybody honest. And if George Lillard's coming with that pressure, if his punches aren't enough, he won't be able to keep him off. It's kind of like the Ted Cheeseman fight, right? With Kieran Conway. He could not keep Ted Cheeseman off him at all. Now, he might have been working on this in camp, but both fighters might be working on the same issue, is Kieran Conway dips to his left a lot. If you watch a lot of his fights, even though he's quite a tall fighter, when he's fighting people about the same height as him, he dips to the left. If George Liddard's been watching his tapes, he might notice that. And as I said, George Liddard has a great left hook. So all he's got to do is throw that left hook low, and he could catch Kieran Conway right in the face. And I feel like if he catches him right as he's going down to the left, Kieran Conway could hit the canvas here if he's not careful. So the thing is, Kieran Conway can't really dip either way because George Liddard carries power in both hands. So I think the best way he can do it really is by just keeping on the back foot and popping that jab. And I feel like that's what Kieran Conway's got to do in this fight to frustrate George Liddard. He has to keep on the back foot and keep popping that double jab out. He needs to get Liddard frustrated. He needs Liddard to lose the early rounds so Liddard starts to get that classic pressure fighter issue where they're like, oh, I've got to catch up now because the slicker boxer is actually outboxing me here. But the thing with Kieran Conway, even on the back foot, he does tend to get not tired, but he just tends to stop doing that plan. I think the best comparison you can use here in fights is the Ted Cheeseman fight from 2019. If George Liddard can replicate what Cheeseman done, I feel like George Lillard's just going to get to Kieran Conway, because at the end of the day, I would say George Liddard is far better than a Ted Cheeseman. So with the clash of styles, this is how I see it, is Conway needs to keep the distance. He wants to keep popping that double jab out, and he wants to keep that jab in Lillard's face and just frustrate him all night. Whilst Liddard wants the chaos, the pressure. He wants to push Kieran Conway back. If he can get Kieran Conway against the ropes, that is where George Lillard's really going to shine. Because like I said, he does not smother his work up close. He's very, very good at swarming people, either head to head in the ring or when he's gone against the ropes. I think it's that classic thing here of that Kieran Conway needs to get George Lillard's respect early. He needs to crack him with something or frustrate him early. Either way, the game plan for me is either go in and try and launch that uppercut and hurt George Liddard so he thinks, okay, I got to watch out for that shot, or stick the jab in his face, keep on the back foot, and just piss him off. But this is a really interesting fight. I'm so excited for this one tonight because I just really can't tell what's going to happen. But if I had to make my pick, I'm probably going to go with George Liddard on points because I don't see him stopping Kieran Conway. Kieran Conway's way too tough. Even if he's down 9 rounds, he's still in there. And I think that's what I respect about Kieran Conway more than anything. He's not like a fighter that has power that's like gets in the 10th round or 12th round and thinks, do you know what? I've got that equalizer. I can stay in this fight. Even if he's lost every round, he's still in the fight because he is a definition of a warrior. And that's why I like Kieran Conway. That's why I watch him. He's so tough and so exciting in that regard that you just sort of respect him as the rounds go on, thinking even if he's losing, you're just like, well done, man. You're doing well. And then you've got George Liddard, who is just fan-friendly to the extreme. But yeah, If Kieran Conway's going to win, in my opinion, it would be on points. I just don't see that happening. So I'm going with George Liddard on points here. Percentage-wise, I'd probably go 70-30. I've got a bit more faith in George Liddard. You know, he's the prospect. He's a bit younger. I just feel like he has just got that better style. And I think most judges and fans are going to go towards the pressure fighter rather than the slicker boxer. So that's my opinion on tonight's fight. I feel like if Liddard gets the momentum going, he's going to be really, really hard to stop. Whereas I feel like if Kieran Conway can frustrate him, that's when we can see things getting interesting. When I would say Liddard's momentum breaks, and then he just starts getting messy, and the pressure fighter starts to panic that he's got to win the later rounds. If you enjoyed the breakdown, please hit the like button and please subscribe to the channel for more fight analysis. And please leave your comments below. I really want to get into more discussions with people, and I really want people to share me their opinions, because the one thing about boxing, it's so subjective, and I just want to hear other people's opinions. So yeah, like, share, subscribe. I'll see you all in the next bout.